This series looks at some of the most interesting and important global events of our time. But it's not merely an impersonal chronological account. Each program takes a different theme and tells the stories through the eyes of the people who were there, people who make us all a witness. The annual Invention Convention in Pasadena, California, where hundreds of inventors from around the world turn up to show off their gadgets, contraptions, and more precisely, their thingamajigs. Now, you may think that what the world needs is fewer inventions and more mechanics to service the ones we've already got. But in Pasadena, they would disagree. For them, the road to wealth is paved with good invention. Like this one, for instance, for people who have difficulty holding their drink. What is it with the Japanese and their inventions? They all seem to need a wiggling body to demonstrate them. And how about this little number? A telephone and baseball cap combined.
The keypad and a talk button. It also has an intercom. When you wear it, it's got the microphone boom. It's also got earplugs that give you I prefer to use both earplugs.
It was Mark Twain who, asked to name the greatest of all inventors, said accident. And funnily enough, our next invention looks just like one waiting to happen. It's guaranteed to put a spring in your step, but at 55 pounds in weight and costing 800 pounds to buy, there may be easier ways to sidestep the rush hour traffic. They call it the Spring Walker, and the designers say that this ungainly contraption of springs and pulleys can take you along suburban roads and across Saharan deserts. It's so versatile, they say, that the armies of 3 countries are queuing up to buy them. And now the accident waiting to happen happened. Up until then, they hadn't put a foot wrong. But the locals still see it as a giant leap for mankind.
We have bicycles, we have automobiles, and now I think we have the Spring Walker.
It's not every small-town bar that boasts a $150,000 cabaret act. But such an entertainer is appearing at a chain of bars in the state of Georgia. He's called Sammy.
One of our stores in Maryland, a couple of the guys at the bar had heard Sammy one too many times. They got real irritated. They attacked him and tore his face off.
How much did that cost you?
It cost us $6,000 to put that face back on.
But worth it?
Yeah, Sammy's worth it. He's a big drawing card for us, and everybody really loves him most of the time.
The loveliness of Paris.
The loveliness of Paris doesn't just rely on Sammy alone. Those rolling eyebrows need a huge compressed air tank, a battery of electronic controls, and enough hardware and software to run a small space station. The makers say that so far they've sold 9 of the robots at $150,000 a time, and that the orders are pouring in.
Yeah, I'm Sammy. Thanks for listening.
And another advantage, when the customer says, "Play it again, Sam," you simply push a button. As the sun rises over seaside heights in New Jersey, the tractors from a company called Beach and Billboard get to work. If you think that the one place in America you won't see billboards is the beach, then meet Patrick Dorry.
The idea came to me in a dream 5 years ago. I woke up out of my sleep at 4 o'clock in the morning, started drawing at my drafting table, and 2 weeks later went to the patent office. And the rest is basically history.
Patrick's dream was of a machine that prints directly onto the sand.
And everyone who seems to be looking at them really loves the idea and the concept. It's very unusual. It has a lot of wow factor. People say, wow, look at that, it's really cool. And to see a beach covered with Skippy peanut butter jars is just mind-boggling. No one has ever seen anything like this before. You're standing on the world's largest billboard as we speak. This is larger than the Hollywood sign in California by 4 times. And it's wiped out at the end of the day, and it's impressed fresh the following day all over again.
But Patrick's big letters in the sand don't impress everyone.
I think it's pretty stupid.
You can't see them. Once people walk all over them on the beach, they're basically useless.
You might notice it for 1 second while you put your blanket down. And if the wind comes up, you won't see it at all.
Yeah, the peanut butter ads. It's pretty cool, I guess. I guess it's a good way to advertise. A lot of people come to the beach.
Patrick is hoping to sell his idea to other beach resorts around the world. But in the meantime, he does wish that the people of Seaside Heights would have just a little more respect for his handiwork. Have you ever wondered about the unique contribution that the French have made to the history of invention? Well, to be quite frank, neither have we. But this venerable gentleman was thinking only of the greater glory of France when he invented this ingenious example of whatever it is. He seems to be shooting birds, not with a gun, but with a camera shaped like a gun. There was at that time in France a crying need for such a device, but only among this woman. This man had a crying need for food, but hasn't noticed that it hasn't been served yet. This housewife had a crying need for another pair of hands. And this poor young thing has a crying need for a life. Got a problem moistening your stamp? This postman has got it licked. Miss the good old pea soupers? Well, why not try our patented portable fog producer? Trouble finding a parking meter? Carry one with you, and the money's yours to use again and again. And this policeman directs the traffic, notwithstanding. Want to be the first ever victim of road rage? Here's how. This man and his pliers are working on the world's first anti-pollution device. A few last-minute adjustments, switch on the fan, and it's ready for its first public airing. Excusez-moi, but did you know that you've got a fishbowl on your head? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I've got a fishbowl on my head. Oh, how they laughed then. But they're not laughing now. At least it doesn't look as if they're laughing, though it's difficult to say for sure. But air pollution in cities is now a very serious problem. Here in the landlocked city of Lanzhou, on China's Yellow River, parents take care to protect both themselves and their children. Rudimentary smog masks are now on sale in the streets, providing some small protection from pollution caused by coal burning, heavy industry, mining, and of course our old friend, the internal combustion engine. A high-tech version of the basic Chinese smog mask is this, the protective buggy bubble.
I often carry him in a backpack sort of to keep him higher up. I don't know if that makes any difference. I sort of feel myself consciously pulling away from the sides of the road because I really do feel that the fumes are very bad for him.
The bubble fits onto any make of buggy and sports a two-stage filter to remove dirt and chemical pollutants from air drawn by a fan into the bubble itself. At first, Lloyd wasn't too happy about being enclosed in his private protected pram, but he soon got used to it. The bubble isn't completely sealed, but the air inside is at a higher pressure and so stops the fumes from getting in. It was invented by Stephen Quester, a 27-year-old student at the Royal College of Art in London, who hopes to find a manufacturer for his invention. Environmental groups say that the device is worth looking at, but it's also a sad comment on the level of pollution in our cities today. One answer to such pollution, according to some experts, is to make smaller cars. Bien sûr, the French might say, but we thought of that years ago, and here are the pictures to prove it. Parisians in 1938 were astonished to discover this little marvel buzzing around their ankles, and commissionaires were dismayed to discover that the driver seemed to demand the right to pull up beside any one of them at random and ask for a light. Within just a few weeks, the car was a write-off, after a commissionaire accidentally stepped on it halfway up the Champs-Élysées. Is it a plane? Or is it a car? This nervous French driver decided in 1946 that the only way to leave a proper gap between him and his fellow motorists was to fly over them. Here, having safely overtaken a Citroën on the Paris ring road, he lands, and within just a few hours he's detached the plane from the car and continued his journey home. A mile off the Florida coast, mysterious figures cast futuristic shadows on the coral reefs deep beneath the waves. They belong to the world's first underwater motorbikes, the brainchild of former British car worker Andrew Sneath. With £100,000 borrowed from family and friends, Andrew has created an ingenious underwater toy that puts a whole new sub-aqua world at your disposal. The breathing apparatus Bubble, or Bob, is controlled by a joystick and will reach speeds of up to 3 miles per hour. Breathing oxygen pumped into a giant perspex helmet, the driver enjoys a silent armchair ride through the splendours of the deep.
It's really taking diving right back to its basics and then just putting it in a shapely body. Just wanted to make it comfortable and relaxing, take away all the stress. The idea was to go down there and have a look around, but now it's so much fun driving in and out of everything that it's hard to stop. You just keep going.
Scientists involved in marine research have shown interest in buying a Bob or two, as have the US Navy underwater bomb disposal team. So the man who turned his back on designing car exhausts back in England could be cruising towards his first million. Like many men, George Shields has a shed at the bottom of his garden. He likes nothing better than to spend time in it, but not necessarily in the garden. With a top speed of over 50 miles an hour and its own distinctive gardening trim, grow faster stripes you might call them, it's certainly a head turner. George calls his shed an agricultural vehicle, and he hopes to raise money for charity with it. And he says that the only problem with driving a garden shed is that when you come to a fork in the road, you wonder whether you dropped it there earlier. The starter's flag is up, the tension is building, and they're off. Welcome to the New Zealand Racing Barstool Grand Prix, the sport designed for the man who's been driven to drink. Designed by a welder from Hamilton, these little beer buggies are capable of speeds up to 45 miles per hour.
Gear out of it, but we lose our nerve then, because riding on this at 75 kilometres an hour is very, very fast.
But driving it is no problem. It's as easy as falling off a log or a bar stool. For more than 100 years now, inventors have been coming up with odd bicycles, most of them a little impractical. Recently, the aim has been to replace the power of the human legs with something a bit more graceful. So when British inventor Sir Clive Sinclair introduced a battery-powered bike motor in 1994, cyclists wondered whether it might be the right gear for them. The little pack adds power to your pedalling for up to 3 hours. The battery is rechargeable for less than a penny. It's controlled by a switch on the handlebars, and a lightweight motor drives a rubber belt, which drives the tyre round. Not all Sir Clive's inventions have met with success, but he bravely donned his bicycle clips before the world's press and took their advice to get on your bike. One of Sir Clive's earlier battery-powered vehicles, the much-maligned Sinclair C5, featured in a groundbreaking legal case in February 1995. The case concerned, my lord, this young couple. When Kirsty Nightingale, on the right, won a Sinclair C5 tricycle at a Valentine's ball and didn't know how to drive it, her boyfriend gallantly took the wheel and powered it along the pavement until he met a member of the local constabulary. The result? An appearance next day before the beak, accused of being the first person in Britain to be drunk in charge of an electric trike. Meanwhile, Kirsty, who still hadn't learned how to connect the battery, pedalled off into the sunset in a vehicle which she'd already learned to call her Formula One bath chair. Road safety is of concern to us all, and certainly has been since 1924, as this exciting footage proved. Feeling a bit run down? No problem, thanks to our patented automobile cowcatcher. Enjoying a little post-lunch snooze on the cobbles? Saved again by the cowcatcher. Now that we've tested it on a human, let's try it with an actual cow. So there you are, happily tootling along on your little Yamaha when suddenly, oh no, it's straight to casualty for you, my lad. Well, actually no, because you were wearing Kenji Takeuchi's new motorcycle safety jacket. Introduced in 1998, it's based on the same principle as a car airbag. And here's Kenji, driving around looking for a nice soft stretch of road to demonstrate it again. Kenji stops to demonstrate how the cord runs between the rider and his motorcycle. Now say I've just crashed, and say that I've just been thrown from the bike like this. Hey presto, compressed air instantly inflates the jacket, and once again, Kenji thanks the Michelin Man for the original idea. Not all motoring inventions are quite as welcome to the motorist as Kenji's. It was more than 50 years ago when George Musgrove, now 81, submitted the idea of yellow lines to a competition to improve road safety. He won £2 for the invention, but after all those years as a model motorist, it finally caught up with him. In 1997, he was faced with a £20 fine, the offence parking on a yellow line. Back in the 1940s, George nearly got knocked over crossing the road between parked cars. That sparked his idea for yellow lines. They were as unpopular when they first came in as they are today. But back in Eastbourne, George is philosophical.
The law is the law and has to be kept, and I have to keep it the same as everybody else, even if I had originated the thing and the warden was doing his duty. I would have liked him to have been lenient in my case, but that wasn't the story.
Traffic police in Finland have taken their zero tolerance campaign to new extremes. If this fearsome device doesn't get through to you, nothing will. And if this should induce a bout of road rage in you, then a dose of the accompanying tear gas should soon give you other things to think about, like sheer survival. This is how it works on the open highway, and this is how some Essex traffic policemen reacted when they saw it.
Inspector, you've had a look at it. Do you want one?
I would, I'd love one. So would my little boy at home on his bike. I mean, it's a phenomenal piece of equipment. And really, if it wasn't August, I think it was April the 1st. It's unbelievable.
This is what most British police forces use to stop runaway car drivers. It's called the Stinger, designed to slowly deflate the tyres of a speeding car without loss of control.
Complete lunacy from what I saw. The thought of getting as close as you have to get to a vehicle in a pursuit situation with that thing sticking out the front of your car is just madness.
Well, he's got a point, even if the Finnish police have got a bigger one. The police car harpoon was certainly a deadly device, but one designed to amuse rather than to be used in anger. But a much more sobering invention, and a literally deadly device, was the suicide machine created by the controversial American doctor Jack Kevorkian. Here he is in 1992, charged with the murder of a Mrs. Wantz and a Mrs. Miller.
Answered by the evidence presented. Causation has thus become a question of fact, one that can best be determined by a jury of their peers.
The doctor was found not guilty. The charge stated that he had given them a controlled substance to aid their deaths in October 1991. But the judge found that the two women had decided independently to end their lives. So Kevorkian walked free while relatives defended the women's right to end their lives by whatever means they chose.
Don't take our rights away from us. That was her choice. It was her right. Don't take that away from her.
Kevorkian was left free to develop his machine in order to help people like multiple sclerosis sufferer Susan Williams.
Oh, what a guy, really.
Dr. Kevorkian explained the process.
But what, that seems that people would say that's rather, to put it mildly, extraordinary.
No, I'm tired of sitting and watching the day go in and out.
How's that? Okay, that's better. Now the mask is on pretty tight. The mixture has no odor or taste or anything, so, and no color. You feel all right still?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it'll be carbon monoxide with mixture, not with air, but with nitrogen. And she'll be getting the air through the side there. But well, it's individual.
And Dr. Kevorkian then continued unabated with his commitment to so-called physician-assisted suicide. Perhaps the most deadly invention of the 20th century has been the nuclear bomb. On June the 16th, 1945, the world's first nuclear explosion took place in New Mexico, under the awed gaze of the scientists who'd worked to make it happen.
The bomb occurred to me already early in 19...
But one of their colleagues, this man, Professor Joseph Rotblat, decided to miss that moment of history.
To do work on a weapon of mass destruction. But after September 1939, when the war broke out and the military might of Germany was revealed, I felt that if German scientists get hold of, can develop the bomb, and Hitler get hold of it, then he could use it to win the war. And therefore I felt it is important for us to see whether the bomb can be made, if it can be made, to make it as quickly as possible, and have it not to be used, but to use as a deterrent.
But 2 months after that successful experiment in New Mexico, in August 1945, a US Air Force plane, the Enola Gay, dropped the first atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. That bomb, and a subsequent one 3 days later, dropped on Nagasaki, ended World War II and changed the world forever. Meet Dolly the Sheep, the first animal to be cloned. When Dolly was first introduced to the world in Edinburgh in 1997, it prompted a host of ethical and scientific arguments. For example, if you can clone a mammal, can you clone a human? The answer was yes, and many experts believe that it's only a matter of time before it happens. But the scientists involved in Dolly's creation will only talk of how their genetic breakthrough will create superior animals.
Composition or whatever characteristic it is that's being selected for.
The use of what we learn is not a scientific question, it's a question for society. And society must decide whether this is used and how it is used. And at the moment, in my view, there is no prospect of it ever being used on humans.
In America, a panel of government scientists soon recommended that the law should allow the cloning of human embryos for research purposes only. But for some, even this was a step too far.
Is to permit cloning as long as the researcher kills the embryo. I think that that's two grave evils. I think it's a seriously flawed proposal.
In Washington, President Clinton expressed deep reservations on the issue.
Any discovery that touches upon human creation is not simply a matter of scientific inquiry. It is a matter of morality and spirituality as well.
There was a degree of public acceptance in America about the benefit to science of cloning animals. But the creation of cloned humans, even in embryo form, was and continues to be strongly resisted. Identical twins, nature's own clones. But should science try to duplicate nature?
I'm very worried about artificially creating identical human beings when individuality is something that's quite an important part of being a human being.
Apart from cloning perhaps being a cost-effective method of producing medicines for human use, and further, producing genetically altered animals capable of providing organs for human transplantation, scientists believe that it might also help infertile couples to conceive. What price indeed? Every major scientific or medical breakthrough seems to bring with it its own unique array of ethical dilemmas. The history of invention remains the same. At first, we believe that a thing can't be done. Then we hope that it can be done. Then we see that it can be done. And finally, we ask ourselves, what can we do about it now it's been done?